Hi, y'all. We're excited to have you here. Want to welcome you to Flatiron School's Intro to Cybersecurity Certifications. My name is Corey Mickelson, and I'm the event coordinator here with Flatiron School. Big part of my job is hosting free introductory workshops like this evening's event to give you guys an opportunity to meet some of our instructors and get a better feel of the Flatiron experience. A quick reminder, that chat box is going to be our main source of communication, so make sure that little blue button is set from host and panelists to everyone so we can all chat together. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our host for the evening, Ian Harrison. He's one of our lead cybersecurity instructors. Go ahead and take it away, Ian.
Well, hello, everyone. Saying just now, I see a couple of familiar faces, but most of you I have never seen before, and I'm happy to see you here. I teach cybersecurity here at Flatiron. I started out as a Flex instructor, which I still retain a few things of, but I've more recently moved into live instruction, still in cybersecurity. I have my own welcome slide here, so we can start sliding through the show. Here's my LinkedIn for everyone who is sharing LinkedIn information in the chat. You can always feel free to add me. Always keep it professional up there. I have a few certifications myself, since that's the topic of discussion today. Started out with A+, Network+, Security+, Linux+, Project+, and CEH. Those are the main active ones I have right now. I've had more. Don't necessarily feel like I should mention all of them, but ITIL, HTML5, CSS3 stuff. But these are the ones that I maintain. So yeah, again, CEH, for example, Security+, we talked about both of these today, and other vendors more widely. ITIL certification. Thank you, Peter. So hobbies and interests, just to open this up, I'm a normal person. I'm not some kind of hero here. I have too many hobbies and interests to list, right? Hopefully, I'm sure I cross some spectrums here. I think I listed enough to make you all feel welcome, and feel free to share some of that in the chat too. Again, we're here to network. We're here to talk to each other, right? So yeah, I remember being new, and I remember not having any idea what to do when it comes to certification, right? Everybody has some story to tell, where whether it's the degree or some kind of certificate, or like short-term non-vendor specific certificate, like get you a business administration certificate, for example. Right, PMPs, that's another one. But being a person who's had too many certificates to mention, those letters begin to mean a little bit less as you keep going down your tenure. And so picking the right ones and trying to get a good pathway set is always helpful, right? You don't just need to pick them all up like candy. So hopefully we can get some people on track today. And at least get the next steps for whether you're low, mid, or even later in your career, like the CISSP folks I've seen mentioned here a couple of times. I see you guys in there. That's me too. I even have a book recommendation for you. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about the actual ones. Here's my 3 vendors I chose to just cover generally today. CompTIA. I beg someone to tell me they don't know who CompTIA is, because if you're here and you're wondering about certifications, these guys should ring a bell, right? They're arguably the go-to vendor for any baseline certification in the tech sector. I mean, I couldn't think of a better thing to say on the fly. I'm glad I have that one there, right? They have a lot of internal certification pathways. Like I said, maybe they have 35 different certifications, but you don't need 35 certifications, right? You might need to go through and pick. They have a lot of good, helpful tools to help you with those. I have a few links here that we can look through today. Getting the CompTIA one specifically, cybersecurity right here. This is what we're talking about, right? A+, Network+, Security+. They used to have these stackable certifications. Because you'll notice, if I come back here and show you my slide, if you try to put all these here in your signature on your email, it starts getting a little long, right? So they have these stackable ones that help you too. So CSIS, some folks know what that means. A lot of companies know what that means. And if you're looking for something to abbreviate it, start the conversation, network yourself, shorter, better, look for brevity, right? So they really help with that. And again, if you're making a first step, you should be looking toward CompTIA for sure. EC Council, is anybody familiar with anything from EC Council that's not CEH? I'll wait for an answer on that one. Anybody familiar with these guys? Feel free to use that chat. No, not yet. Yeah, and see, Okay, there we go. A couple, two no's to the yes. A lot more no's I'm seeing. Oh yeah. And see, the reason I think that is they're almost niche. I feel like they fit really cool little sectors, right? I mean, notably the CEH. Everybody does know the CEH. Or I say everybody. I mean, a larger share of you will know the CEH than, for example, the CHFI, which we talked about a little bit too in a slide or two. So, right, where does that bring you? You might feel like something like that sounds funny when you're talking about a certification. You want to have as much applicability, have some CompTIA. Good. And so, right, if you have a couple CompTIA certs, that next one's going to be higher up the tier, right? Look into a CASP, something else we talk about here. CISSP. It keep moving up the chain, right? Because you can never be happy. if you just get a few certifications and your career is going to coast on them, at some point you're going to have to start even renewals, right? With the I started taking my Security Plus 2 exams ago. They've had 2 updates since it. Yeah, disaster recovery, exactly. Penetration testing specifically, like with the CEH. The forensic investigation was a cool one. I took a, I don't put this one up here because I didn't actually take my CHFI exam for the sake of just not paying for a voucher, if I'm being honest with everybody. But I did study for it. Decided not to do it because of the market applicability for what I was trying to do, being an educator. But it's still, even if the market share is say 2% across all the certifications, you're going to need it for a specific job. That's why the certification exists, right? So everything from the tiny, minute, only 0.02% of people will ever see or take this exam, to the ones that 40% of all technical people have, like, an A+ or a Network Plus. You have a lot of options here, a lot of vendors. So I'm hoping I'm going to open some eyes again. Right, and they also have another unique method. So I have a CEH. I took my multiple choice questions with the EC Council exam system. This is also, I'll mention, it's a pretty high level certification, I think. It's the only one I ever failed first try, full disclosure. Anybody feel shameful about failing a certification exam ever? Don't. If you're not failing an exam, it's not a good enough exam, right? I mean, if nobody's failing it, it's not testing anything. So keep at it, keep studying. But yeah, that CEH is the first one I failed. Have John. Yeah, Christopher Nielsen. That's actually my last slide of everything, of like another reason, just like, why do certs matter, right? Stick around, we're good. That's like the whole point of this, right? Failed pen test plus, respect to you. Announce it proudly, right? Wear your flag, get your Purple Heart, and move on, right? Please share your LinkedIn. Yep. So my LinkedIn is in the first slide here, or the second slide for my introduction, and we will share these out after the presentation. Right, so they also do a CH master, right? So I fail this multiple choice exam, huge hurt in the heart, right? Yeah, failed your first try. How hard does it hurt not to know, just that you failed an exam and it feels bad to your pride, but you spent the money on it, right? And unless you paid for the big package in their training, you didn't get an extra try, so you have to pay for another voucher. I was too cocky going in. I hadn't failed on up to the point, right? Every now and then something's going to give you a good left hook, right? Yeah, Julie, if you passed on second, good, keep it up. And hey, continuing education credits, I can't recommend those enough. And also, just a fun fact for everybody else who's paying attention, a lot of these certifications expire, right? So it doesn't matter which one you get, you're gonna have to get it again in the future generally. And so if you take, failing once, the best practice you can have. But right, so if I have a Security Plus, Network Plus, A+, and then I get a security or a CEH, I can connect those accounts, right? I can get continuing education credits that renew my other certifications in that time. I don't have to take another exam. I'm not having to pay, to take additional trainings, right? So, I mean, it really is helpful. A lot of them play off of each other and contribute to each other. Standardization comes with time, right? But either way, so again, just to keep moving forward a little bit, show the following shirt pound link for. Yeah, and MD right here, 162 other people or 61 other people are seeing right to what you're saying. I'm keep sharing, everyone. Yes, network with each other, become best friends, make this world a more secure place, please. ISC squared, parenthesis 2 squared. It's just how we end up having to write it out, right? Sure, yeah, let's do that, Gary.
I'll copy it to my notes, and that way I can add it next time.
Thank you. All right. But yeah, so ISC squared, and yeah, and there are lots of, you're very welcome. There are lots of different vendors. You know, I actually considered a couple more to cover for this tonight. For example, I'm gonna just give you honorable mentions here. ISACA, ISACA, wonderful vendor. At some point, we just, I know we're gonna have a lot to talk about. You know, we were talking about the attendance of this just now. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to have the conversation to answer the questions that you all want to have answered, right? So I focused on these three and a few more of their certs, so one or two each, so 5, 6, something like that we cover. But again, yes, there's more. There's a whole field of them. There's plethora of vendors, and then beyond that, the next honorable mention that I again had even a slide partially created for these, but I didn't want to create a whole sideshow discussion, right? Would be industry specific certifications, right? So if you work in Cisco, your Cisco CCNA security are going to be your first steps pretty much, right? So if you're a network professional and you know you're going to be a network engineer or a network security engineer, that's probably going to be in one of your first steps is Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, something like that, and start working up toward their specific certifications if you're going to be working with their hardware for your career, right? So that aside, I try to use some good generically applicable ones too. So ISC squared though, back on track here to my slide. I'm gonna move that around and undo it here for you. The industry authority, I would say, for high tier certifications. This is the CISSP authority that everyone talks to, right? That's probably the one that I've seen mentioned in the chat here, scrolling up the most too, is CISSP, of people, just being interested in it and it being an end objective, even if not the next for them. And again, these are them, the Internet Security Consortium or something of that nature, or information security. But yeah, so adding to this whole exclusivity of this big holy grail certificate authority is the way you actually go through the experience of getting their certifications, which can be pretty tough for sure. You have to have a sponsorship, or you have to have a certain number of years of experience on a resume and like write out pretty much like a justification of why you are an applicable candidate for this, almost like a PhD. If anybody's familiar how getting a PhD and earning your PhD is, with like being judged against the board, and you could say that you're a PhD candidate for so long before you're actually your PhD and you earn it. A lot of funny stuff like that they've tried to implement. All of these have some minor paywalls here and there to keep the organizations alive, to where like if you get a continuing education certificate with CompTIA, like I was mentioning, being able to renew them by getting other certs or training in other ways. I think even this, I just actually started thinking about it today. These presentations that I do for Flatiron, absolutely, Tim, stick around, keep at it. And again, I'm trying to help. There's a ton of mist around it, right? There's so much out there. There's so many vendors, so many certifications, so many ways to go. And that's why I'm hoping we get some direction for folks here today. But again, right, like, so these presentations that I do could be considered articles, right, that I'm contributing out. No worry, Paul, glad to have you. So I could even do these for continuing education certificate or credits and submit them to the authorities, particularly CompTIA or EC Council, since I am actually still a sitting candidate for the ISC squared. I do not have my CISSP yet. Yeah, I went the CEH route. I thought that was similar tier, right? But again, that's one of my fallacies. We'll talk about a little bit more here, start moving forward. When we get to the covering specifically again on the ISC squared, foresight into the future, it's really just a really high market share certification, right? I mean, a lot of people just want it. It applies to a lot of things. But okay, so to cover the CompTIA, those that are coming in earlier or who, again, CISSP isn't for everyone, right? These two are still going to be, you're very welcome. Oh yeah. Thanks for handling some of the chat here, Corey. So Security Plus, these are the domains that it actually covers, right? So if you're preparing for a Security Plus, there's more. I just picked 4 of the 6 or 8 that they have. And then again, I do share the link of how you can see the rest. So for one, we can scroll here and show you all of them. But again, for the top cybersecurity out there. And again, so I talk a little bit more about that, Steve, too. Is the CISSP the top cyber cert? And again, I think the best way to say that's the top is probably market share, right? If you just did any given search, which we'll do this later on, pick a site and look for jobs that ask for a CISSP compared to jobs that ask for one of the same tier, for example, right? That we're talking about the same jobs that they apply to. I would argue that it's probably usually better, and the sake of that, it'll apply to more places. But again, there's a lot more takeaways here. So I'm hoping you got some, or you still have some interest in like the CASP, for example, which is one that we're going to go over here in a second after the Security Plus. And start to get distracted with chat here. You're very welcome, Steve. Hope to see you over the next hour or so here. We got a lot more to talk about, right? Gosh, I thought I skipped it somewhere. I was looking for it. I think this is it. Now I'm a little messed up, jump between chat here. Actually, this is the best one. So I shared this in the article too. This, you see, it's a Japanese domain, but it's probably the only place that just readily puts out all the domains. How does OWASP fit into all of this? That'll be a fun conversation too, and I might slide that one to the Q&A. Right, more web app penetration testing, general statement, right? Yeah. So right, this is a actual PDF. You usually have to sign up and grab it, but somebody published it, and I don't mind sharing it because we all need to know this stuff, right? Here are the domains and the percentages and weights that they actually hold in the exam. And again, I do share this link with you guys in the slideshow. Will be to get this distributed out for you. But to zoom in for anybody who's having trouble here, governance, risk, and compliance. How many times have we said those words today, everyone? 3 or 4 people said they actually already work in it. And you see here it holds a nice 14% of, at least at the time of this publishing, 14% of the Security Plus exam is still on that content, right? It matters a lot because governance is kind of why we do everything, right? You can't really convince people to spend thousands and thousands or millions of dollars in cybersecurity and prevention and, red team paying for penetration testers and gray hat hackers to test your network, right? Nobody does that to spend all that money for fun, right? They do it because they kind of have to, right? And that's where GRC comes in. So yeah, I'm gonna close this one out for now. Just wanted to share those domains with you. But again, right, so here's 4, a little bit bolder, better readability for some of you guys. Mid to entry level, or entry to mid level, if you want to say it in that perspective. Security Plus is arguably that first stepping stone. Azure and AWS certs valuable. Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I'm assuming I'm saying that right. Apologize if I'm not. If your company or your organization is using Azure or AWS, you pretty much need them, right? Or if you're interested in getting into a different position in your company, but they leverage AWS, boom, that's one of the things I was talking about with those honorable mentions, right? So if you work for Amazon explicitly and you're trying to climb that ladder and meet their standards, Amazon certs are going to be the ones primarily that you're going to want to focus on, probably, right? I mean, at least some of them, and then supplement them with other external, right? Like an AWS administrator cert, but also mixed with a CISSP, probably be super applicable to any organization. But okay, right. And so mid-entry level, it's a necessary stepping stone, right? I would never tell someone who still wants to get a CISSP not to get a Security Plus, right? So, I mentioned I teach cybersecurity for the school. We teach GRC. We teach about incident response and penetration testing and stuff. But it's very cyclical, right? So we talk about Python. We'll talk about GRC. We'll talk about some of the laws, right? And then when we cycle back around, we start talking about the policies, right? So the policies are written in response to the laws, or written in response to, some potential malpractice being, or your system being potentially used for some kind of malpractice, right? An acceptable use policy. How many people have logged into a computer at some point? A lot of healthcare workers, I know you guys are going to say yes, where it gives you the big banner where it says, warning, this is a healthcare or a Centera computer or a U.S. Department of Defense computer, and it gives you that big splash page, right? Everybody who hasn't seen one of those, feel free to speak up. I'll definitely elaborate on them more. But right, so those are called acceptable use banners, right? So there has been a time where someone has gotten away with hacking into an organization's network, admitting it, but the reasoning was, hey, there was nothing that said I wasn't allowed to be here. It was just another IP address. I was just looking at files, right? And eventually this person just doesn't have anything done to them, right? So that's court precedent. And that's really where you started seeing things like that start popping up. So that was just a fun fact for everyone, if that helps. But anyway, so it's a vendor neutral. That's a big part about CompTIA. And why I stayed away from the vendor specific ones. Again, AWS and Azure, cool, great stuff, widely used, right? But vendor neutrality really is going to help. If you know a lot about cloud specifics, for example, and cloud is covered on Security Plus too. Again, somebody was asking earlier, I forget who that was, but that's one of the subjects I get covered in both cloud and CASP, or Security Plus and CASP, though there is a Cloud Plus certification as well. 90 questions in 90 minutes. So it's a fast-paced test, right? And I think that can kind of set the bar of what you can expect when you take a Security Plus. I've sat for it. Some people told me they took it 6-7 times and couldn't pass it, just did not understand, and that they've never heard of anybody who passed it the first time. But I did pass it the first time, and a lot of people pass it the first time. So really, all these exams are going to be a different ask and a different lift for every head in this chat, right? So calling something entry to mid-level, it's really if it fits your path. I think this would be a good first start, right? If you're staying into the vendor and not jumping directly into a CISSP, the CASP is that logical next step. Look at the alignment of the domains that actually get covered. And again, here I still have this web page pulled up for us today of where I directly looked at how much it cost, how many minutes the test is, how many questions are on it, the domains that you'll learn, the jobs that's applicable to, organizations that use it, right? They have great informational pages. I do share these links with you. But what I wanted to pull together and aggregate here and show you guys is how closely related they are. Architecture and design, architecture, operations and incident response, security operations, right? And this is that cyclical nature that I wanted to mention, that we're going to teach about, that a university is going to teach, like that any of these certification vendors are going to teach in the same manner, right? So we are going to reiterate and constantly assimilate new information into existing information, right? So we're going to keep beating on the same horses. So we're going to see this pattern as we keep moving forward through the slides. And a couple of other mentions for the CASP, and I'm going to compare it directly to the CISSP, which again is in here. Everybody, be patient with me. It's more for practitioners and managers, right? They try to target the architects, the engineers, rather than the managers, the CIOs, the administrative side of the executive branch, more or less, right? I feel like CISSP hits more around that domain, and this one is more, actually being the guy who's still configuring servers and, potentially being the last straw that gets hit when somebody sees something in a security report that nobody else can answer, right? So, GRC concepts and CompTIA Network Plus exam. Not 100% sure on that, Damn, so sorry about that. And yeah, so and the last mention here before I take a question or two and then move to the next slide, comparison here, 90 questions, 165 minutes to the 90 questions in 90 minutes, right? I mean, totally different pace, totally different style of questions, not what is the command that does this? What is the tool that does this? That's Security Plus. CASP would be more like, given this situation in this kind of environment, what would be the best outcome? That's more CISSP CASP style wording, where you need to have a little bit more of an advanced understanding of the overarching kind of concepts of security and cybersecurity as a whole, rather than learning more facts and kind of being introduced to tools and terms and things like that. I'm super glad we're here. We're definitely here to help you, Paul. I'm always like to see a good remark there. So yeah, let's move on to the EC Council. So again, this is the higher cert that I hold, would be the CAH over here. But I'm going to jump into the Certified Hacking Forensic Investigator. Has anybody, um, watched some of the TV shows? This is probably some of the cyber stuff that you would have seen given out on ABC, NBC, or any of the normal TV networks, right? Somebody getting a hard drive and pulling data off of it. If anybody's seen Mr. Robot, thumb, hands up, that was a cool show. But you've seen people do like sim tricks where they're popping sims out of their card, and like copying stuff. A lot of cool data, retrieval methods. Yeah, it was a really cool show. I actually didn't finish that one either. I never finished any shows. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so that's kind of that forensic stuff that you will actually learn in this. And again, I mentioned I studied for this and didn't sit for the exam. And one of my fun facts here is part of why I didn't do that. But again, this applies very explicitly to a specific role, right? Will the recording be available? Yes, Charlotte, there will be a recording available. So here are some of the domains. Again, sorry for my lack of label here. I guess I just overlooked that. But computer forensics and investigation process, data acquisition and duplication. Like I said, stealing a SIM card, throwing it in another device and having whatever program copy all that SIM data, that's SIM hijacking, right? You can be a man in the middle. You can pretend to be somebody's phone. That's actually something that's covered in here. Numerous platform specific forensics, right? So we talk mobile, Internet of Things. Do you guys notice there is one geared towards autonomous systems? Michael, do you mean a certification in general that's geared towards autonomous systems, or was this in response to another chat question? And I'll keep moving forward while I wait for that one. But yeah, so numerous platform specific forensics, Windows, Linux, Mac, mobile, wireless hacking even has a specific, it's really, really specific to the domain because everything's going to have a different forensic technique, right? But it does cover them all. And the biggest thing that I can say you're going to need here, and again, defeating anti-forensic techniques. Does malware reverse engineering? Malware reverse engineering, the roles are a slippery slope. I don't want to identify like a role does this or that because that's company specific. But a big takeaway here is how the certifications apply to external regulatory standards and like compliance. And that's really where my last slide really puts the cherry on top with all of this and how that stuff pulls in. Are there topics that cover user education? Right. So in the Paul, that's like an insider threat, for example. User education, your insiders are really 60 to 80, depending on what vendor you ask or who's doing the survey, percent of the vector that causes some kind of initial problem. Really, social engineering is involved in all of it. Accidentally getting a password, somebody says something too loose-lipped, pretending to be somebody else, pretending to be in a position of authority, phishing emails. Phishing is social engineering, right? User education is kind of like inherent to all that, right? It's like, yeah, so not a problem at all. I'm glad we're on the same page there. I'm gonna answer one more question real quick. Abani, if I'm saying that incorrectly, I do apologize. Which role does malware reverse engineering? Again, to the role thing, but I wanted to recap on this for you. It's more or less what abilities do you need to be able to reverse engineer malware, right? And that's going to depend on a few things, and that's what kind of malware it is primarily, and what the organizational need for it is. So, but we'll get to that in more of the Q&A. I want to try to get through a couple more slides. But hold on to that one because that is a good discussion. It's just a whole can of worms, right? Okay, back to the CHFI though. The biggest takeaway I can say to everyone, it's extremely tool and term heavy. So, when I went through the course, my instructor directly told me that it's over 100 tools, and that the best study method for that would be to just go through whatever course study guide they give you, whether through EC Council or another vendor, just make sure it's actually licensed, and correlate all the tools that they mention in the book with one, other side of the flashcard, fill it out with a general description of what it does, right? because that's 20+% of the test, if I remember correctly. Legal process and methodology. So let's just say you and I meet each other, any given person here on chat. You and I are in a business relationship now, and or even you all are a company. Let's just do it this way. I'm on the fly here. Everyone in chat here, all 158 of you, and us two, and other than us two panelists, are an organization, and then us panelists are like an IT firm. So Corey, I'm pulling you into this on me. You're just going to go to court with me. So we tell you that we sell cyber forensics, right? And we come to, or you put an ad out and you're, hey, we had a hack, or we don't know if we had a hack. We need somebody to come in and look at this stuff, right? If I come in and I don't follow the right processes, what would be the go-to certification for entry level cyber job? Entry cyber job, I would say jump into that Security Plus. First one, if you're looking for the first step and you're looking for a generic, vendor neutral, anything else, and this is to Michael, I would say Security Plus is a good first stop. CH mostly theory. No, CH, I'm 2 lines away. I'll come right to it here, boss. So legal process and methodology, right? So if you guys call Corey and I, we come do a forensic analysis and we pull data and we find all the stuff we need to do, right? Or find all the information. We're like, this guy hacked you. This is for sure what happened. You know, this IP address, and here's the trail. But we didn't follow the right legal methodology of data retention, duplication, keeping like a master copy that nobody ever touches or boots from, cloning it with like special devices, only working on working copies, having a full chain of custody, for example, to where somebody has to sign it. I am the last person to touch this. I'm handing it to this person, sign this paper at this time, this date. It's that specific because it's legal. And to add one more to it, Texas, I had this given to me by a colleague of mine named Ryan. So if he's in here paying me tribute, thank you for being here, man. And I'm using your fun facts. Texas and some other states, when I looked it up, and here's a link for you guys, actually require you to be a licensed private investigator to perform these cyber functions. So not only would it just not hold up in court if I came with improperly handled data to like legal proceeding, but if it was in Texas or one of these other states that enforced this licensure, I would be going to jail. We would be going to jail because it's literally me impersonating a police officer at that point. So they would charge me with some kind of misdemeanor, or depending on subject matter, things like that, could even go up to felony if I said I was applicable to certain things, right? So I mean, it gets really steep really quick. So again, CHFI market share, with the people who are here for the CISSP thinking it's the holy grail, which it is, sure. It doesn't apply to everything. A CISSP is not going to license you for something like this. It's not going to prepare you for it. It's not going to tell you the tools. It's its own thing, right? And that's, if I go back a slide or two, fits into its own niche. The EC Council vendor fits into its own niche. It has a lot of really cool certs like this one. So now let's go into CEH. Everybody likes this one, right? Footprinting and reconnaissance. That's not right. Social engineering, cryptography, and of course, hacking on multiple platforms. That's the one everybody wants to see. Web vulnerabilities, mobile vulnerabilities, again, wireless, pretty much anything that you would do forensics on the left here. You are pretty much taught the methodology, given the tools, and shown how to go about exploiting over here on the right. So command specifics, right? So Nmap, Wireshark, Metasploit, all these cool tools that you may have heard of, may not have heard of. If you haven't, write them down, study them, learn them. You're going to need them for work and for education here. I see a couple messages coming in here. I'm going to just finish this one, and then I'm going to start reading a couple of those before the next slide, not ignoring you all. But right, so command specific, use and know the tools. Specific. Don't take that lightly. They expect you to know flags, right? So if you're using Nmap, they want to know what the PN or PS or SS flags stand for. If you're using Wireshark, they want to know, where, or I'm sorry, not Wireshark, but Metasploit, for example, keeps its exploits in this whole hierarchy with, / auxiliary or Windows or Linux. And it's like its own file system, for example, and it would expect you to know some of the ins and outs of that even, because Metasploit's a very common tool, right? And so, a tip of mine, Again, this coming from having the CEH, I do have the standard, not the master or the stackable one, but I do have the basic CEH, which was the original. Uh, mnemonics is really, that's really, I say, it sounds like a grade school tip, right? You know, everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna sing a song. Think of it, letter means this word, right? But a lot of times when the developers write these tools, write the code for these scripts, they use mnemonics, right? I mean, we're not robots. We use DNS names rather than IP addresses when we go to websites, right? Because we remember words and letters like that better than numbers. So H, right, is often going to be help. Q in a lot of commands is query, right? S for scan, or you know, make mnemonics, right? Look through the man pages if you're a Linux person. Man, which is a manual, space command name, will show you how to use commands. If I'm talking over some people's heads here, Linux is going to be one that you're going to be working into, right? If you touch on a Security Plus, if you come into a CEH, CISSP, you're probably going to need to touch a Linux or a Unix system at least once or twice and kind of vaguely familiarize yourself with it. So yeah, and I'm going to look at chat for a second here before I move on. Linux. Sorry, David. I'm actually, you're almost hurting my feelings there. I started, and other than my tenure in healthcare, which was still about 50% Linux, was start to finish, my career has been in the environment. I started on a LAMP stack web host in Virginia Beach. So Isaac, let me see here. I'm currently going to Springboard. Yeah, so Isaac, I'm not sure when you joined here. I want to show you a couple more things and go back to them, and I hope this helps other folks as well. Lori, a few that prefer Linux. It's just a few. Yeah, it's not all of us. I realize it is not the expected desktop operating system, but on the server side, it really is the market share king. 90% Linux at my job. That's a great problem to have, indeed. So Isaac, the Springboard, I'm not totally sure what Springboard is. It sounds like it might just be a learning service. A lot of information. He's having difficulty reading through some of the information and like prioritizing it, right? So, okay, it's a boot camp. Cool. Okay. And, you know, come to the dark side. I teach for Flatiron and I'm very partial. I really like the place. But again, even if you're learning at your own pace and just trying to get some good information to take home, I'm here to help, right? So let's look back to the CAS or the Security Plus, for example. Remember the link I showed you from that .jp Japanese domain? This one has the direct percentages and weights of what you would expect to see on your Security Plus exam, for example. And a lot of places will have this. Maybe a caveat to a CEH. I actually went to a school, Western Governors University, if anybody's familiar with it. They were one of the larger buyers of CEH vouchers or EC Council vouchers in the world, right? And even they didn't know some of the ins and outs of the exam, so they're really shady about like what's going to be up there. And then also with CISSP, for example, you won't see a lot of this, which you do still see domains and some relative numbers, but it uses a dynamic testing environment. So if you're doing well on one, it might not ask you as many questions on that. It might just kind of ask you 5 out of the 12 that it might have planned and then cut you off because you got 100 out of 100, or, you know, 5 out of 5. But if you were having trouble or getting like second best answers for some of the other domains, they might give you more questions to really push you into the corner that you're uncomfortable in. So it's really, I mean, they're out to get, they're against you, right? So hard to say exactly what to prioritize, but the first thing you would do is look at any good, you know, sign up. You might need to give them your email address or sign up for an account for whatever vendor it is. But you could probably find some kind of percentage breakdown of the domains by exam. And if you can't, it's because they don't share it publicly. It's just going to be proprietary. But at that point, what you would do is you know, you definitely want to do certification preparation through some kind of licensed vendor of the certificate authority, right? Like, so I'm talking about Security Plus, that's going to be CompTIA. If we're talking about CISSP, that's going to be ISC squared. EC Council for CEH, for example. MD, yeah, I mean, it was still college. they got me some certifications. That was a cool part. But again, I really felt really quickly that the certifications I was getting were already just not going to apply to the jobs that I was trying to do and get into. So like, again, like I have to take an A+ exam to get through a course. But I would never use that in my career at this point. But which I know it's like, oh no, they're giving me too many certifications. It was a good experience. I went to multiple colleges and universities, and that was probably the best that I experienced. How can I get the information shown? This, and I'm sorry if you can't see the address bar or anything here. Super sorry, I'm dragging my Zoom thing around here. But this CompTIA.jp, I do share it in the footnote here of the slideshow, which will be incoming after the presentation. And so, yeah, your program is preparing for Security Plus. You'll definitely want to reference this. I'm more than happy to share that. This is the kind of information that I always wanted to, and I just didn't know how to find it. So let's do this, right? I hope I can pay it forward. But yeah, so let's, where were we at? We were finishing up on this one. And I think we're getting to somewhere that everybody might want to be. If anybody can guess what certification we're going to cover next, it might be the CISSP. The gold standard, right? I put this in its own column. Within 3 business days. Thank you so much, Troy. I say gold standard here. That's not by accident. I also have a suggested study material down here, the CISSP all-in-one exam guide. It's the gold book. I meant to grab it and leave it here so I could show you all, but I forgot. However, I do have a link here. Mine is blue. This is the newest edition. Highly recommended by not only myself, which again, I haven't sat for the exam, but my sponsor, which was my former director of IT, a person I worked with in the Navy continuous training environment, and every Reddit board. So, I mean, it's really the highest rated book. So I shared this link with you. I gave you the ISBN and the footer as well. But again, the gold standard, right? I mean, between Security Plus and the CISSP, I would say are the two that everybody here probably knows the best, right? That you've heard of the most, that you've seen on job requirements the most. And yeah, I mean, that's for sure the most sought after certification, right? Their own data shows that it's a high salary, it's a high tier certification as well, 131,000 in the US average salary of people who just have it, which again applies to a lot of different job roles. Exercise, right? So I kind of want you all to do this. I don't necessarily belong to my own Indeed, but I did, leave you my results here. Pull up Indeed, pull up Monster, pull up Dice, whatever your poison is, and kind of look around, right? So search just CISSP as your certification. Can help cover gaps and resume. Danza, that's exactly what I wanted to respond to a minute ago. We should talk about kind of what I was getting to with my WGU discussion, Western governors. I'll come right back to that. That's a good question. So if you search CISSP, I got something like 19 or 21,000 instant hits, right? I mean, just across all US, not remote or anything. CISSP US as the place search, I got like 21,000 results or something. Right, so you have to be working in for 5 years. But if you're not working for 5 years and you can't get sponsored and take the exam and all that good stuff, you get what's called the associate. So you've sat for the exam, but like I was saying, like the whole PhD, like I'm a PhD candidate, but I've taken classes or maybe even done all the courses, but my dissertation hasn't been approved by a board of directors or something like that, right? So it's kind of like the associate is I passed the test, I'm a PhD candidate, and the CISSP itself is I have officially been certified. I am the PhD that I say I am. And I would say, if I gave you a certification that was PhD level, it would be the CISSP. I feel like it correlates a lot to what you would study in a PhD program, but for what that's worth, I don't think PhDs are necessarily worth it unless a school is going to sponsor you for it in our field. Because again, if you look at the average salary range of a CISSP holder, which is again 40%, right, of market share, I would call, people expect to see it. A lot of different positions do. It applies to them, right? Like I said. But again, right. So pull up Indeed and then CASP. I searched CASP under the same. Back to the slide, not to jump around too much. I know I'm rambling. Right, but CASP, and then CASP Plus. I put them both and add them together. It's only 3,000, 3,500 results, something like that on Indeed. So again, they all have their facets. You know, CASP is more for practitioners, like I said. So if you're doing more hands-on stuff, not doing managerial paperwork, policy writing, things like that, maybe the CASP still is for you. And the organization that would be hiring you to do those jobs should know that too, right? And if they don't, it's just a matter of time where, you know, the better certifications do float to the top, which is why we see CASP rising so much. 2-3 years ago, I looked and I actually can't even find the article anymore. But even a man that I read all about, contributed to both of them for years, still always recommended the CISSP because of how steep the market share difference was, but it's just not applicable anymore. And I'm going to show you some stuff of why that isn't. I think the next slide. But right, so the domains here, sorry about this one, it's all caps. That's just a formatting issue. Didn't mean to do that one, but security and risk management, asset security, architecture, engineering, lots of terms we've seen before, right? IAM might be one of the newer ones. And that's going to be a lot for auditing, right? Anybody deal with IAM in any of their jobs, healthcare folks, you know, just personal tracking who logs into what systems and having that accountability chain. But yeah, security operations, I'm going to say that if we go back, security operations right here, CASP, same stuff, operations incident response, same stuff, right? So none of this is, yeah, thank you, Paul. And so none of this is going to be extremely different from the other one. Again, it's like, it's really where it's going to fit. And I guess this is, unless anybody has any specific questions about the CISSP that I can answer right now, which I guess I should look back. I have a few messages here. I think we're going to go on to, you know, why they matter and how they apply to external regulation there. But right, so let's see, you have to be working 5 years. So I did talk about this one. Any specific security role or specific like security manager. Right, okay, so this is all just good feedback. Yeah, I'm happy to see everybody here working back and forth with me. MD, is that a question for you? I wonder if it's any security role or specific like security manager. Could you elaborate on that one for me? Christopher. Right, and so I'm going to circle back to the Dams's question earlier too. Can certifications replace work experience or help cover gaps in your resume? Yeah. I mean, it's really there to check a box so they don't have to interview, right? And so let's just say somebody is looking for IAM, since we were just talking about it, right? Somebody's looking for somebody who has IAM experience. I mean, your certification, being in that domain and having a certification in that is going to be applicable, but there's still, so it might get you through what, maybe like a cyber checkbox or a CAPTCHA somewhere, right? It might get you through, what am I saying here? Totally lost my train of thought trying to read here. I'm super sorry, everyone. CASP. Yeah, if you were going into cyber or following the CompTIA, I have a question you're asking if the CYSA, which is another CompTIA certification, should be taken before the CASP or CASP Plus. Again, I always say CASP, but however you want to word that. Yeah, again, they have those internal certification roadmaps that probably tell you do something like Security Plus, CASP, and then go on to like a CYSA and then go on into a CASP. But really, it's how much help you need, right? So if you struggled really bad with the Security Plus, it might be a better idea for you to jump into one more a little sooner, rather than trying to jump straight up into a CASP or CISSP, and then try something more intermediate between there that tackles some of the same domains. Again, like maybe looks at it from a different perspective, right? And so I just get the warning, we have 30 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to a slide after this one last story here. So Damsith, I worked in the field before I went to college. I didn't have any experience, right? I went to one in-class college course that I fell in love with Linux, no joke. I instantly head over heels, right? And it was a guest professor. He wasn't even around my main professor. It was a Windows class. He came in one day and I instantly was like, this is what I'm doing. This is, you know, year one, operating systems concepts. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an instructor and I'm going to talk about Linux. Here I am, by the way. So keep your ears open, friends. So, and yeah, that was what the vulnerability where it counts. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, vulnerabilities are, I mean, across the spectrum. That's what it's all about, right? Holes. We got to patch holes. We got to keep the ants out of them, keep the critters out of them, right? Right. So I worked in the field in a Linux web host after only having like very little training, no certification, no diploma. Even I had a GED at the time. I dropped out of high school even. And now I have a master's degree in CEH, right? So I mean, some of it is paper, right? Some of it is paper, and you're going to want to see it. But other times, people just need you in there, right? If you can just operate in Linux, was almost enough to get me into this first job. And I did that for a year, and then I went back into school online when I found a school that worked for me, which did end up being WGU. Well, I went to another one first, and I spent a year there, and none of my credits applied. I'm not even going to mention them. So and they've changed names a couple times. So if that tells you anything. Right, but Western Governors did help me, and it gave me that like paper that I liked, but it did not at all prepare me in the way that working or that the boot camp stuff that I see and teach today prepare people for, because you really have to get hands-on. Some schools are good, right? Some schools are really good, and the more in person you can get, a lot of times you get those missing links that I feel like I miss sometimes. But like if you're not in a synchronous environment and like discussing stuff live one-on-one like we are here, a lot of times you miss stuff, right? So that would be my review in general of like, is it in lieu? No, I really think you kind of need all of it. I think education in the university system is a lot of reading and term learning and vocabulary and kind of familiarizing yourself with what you're going to see. And a lot of that is possibly focused on people in those environments being younger and not really being ready to move into professional environments, right? If you look at a four-year university, it's going to be overwhelmingly young adults, right? 20 or 25 or less, something like that. So again, but to move on again, I know we're running out of time, so I want to jump into anything. If looks like I got a couple of thank yous rolling. You're super welcome. Vulnerability, right? Yeah, Chris, exactly like I said, that's the basis of everything, right? If there's something that somebody can do wrong, they're going to do it, and we got to try to protect ourselves from it. So right, why do the certifications matter? This is a big one, right? Compliance. GRC people, help me out with this. You got to have policy internally that says I apply to these standards. It doesn't matter if you say, oh, well, these guys have these certs. If you don't have any information database to manage it and say it applies to this and policies to show how it correlates, then it's not really gonna hold any flame unless somebody specifically just takes your certification, right? So here I have another one, and actually I already have it pulled up here. This is the approved baseline certification chart for the Department of Defense in the US. You'll see they have 1, 2, 3 levels for a couple of different spots, and then they have singular levels for 5 others down here. And this gets updated every couple of years, so this has changed significantly since the first time I looked at it. But I did kind of update my information based on it, and I want to point out a few things, right? Market share discussion, back to that. Look at how many of these the CISSP or the CISSP associate apply to, right? One, this is a CISSP with a specialty on the end. If you see dash, some other acronym, those are like next level, kind of like I was mentioning with CEH and then the CEH master, which would be like a more of a lab-based exam. You go in and try to hack a machine in a lab that they set up. But yeah, so these are other specializations beyond the base CISSP. But CISSP or associate, CISSP or associate, CISSP or associate is in here 2 or 3 more times, I promise. Right, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. So level 3 here, and level 2 here, just from one certification. So that means all of these jobs that this title applies to in the Department of Defense's entire catalog of positions that do the things they need to do, which is all documented somewhere, right? They have major information policy. You are now applicable for all of these jobs. IAM level 2, which is like a management. T is technician, M is management, I believe. A is something to do with auditing, if I'm not mistaken. I used to know these, and they did have a better description of it on the older version of the page, but anyway, but right. So, but you also see other ones applied in here too, right? Your security plus. If you come in to if you get a security plus and post it online, you're going to be an IA2 level technician in the DoD. So if you were looking on Indeed, Monster, what have you, and you put in IAT2, or IAT, II, like it is here, you're going to get all kinds of government contractors that know this nomenclature, know this verbiage. And I had no clue how to look for this until I was 2 years into the DoD, and somebody told me, right? Somebody's like, oh no, you're this now. You can look for jobs like that. No, who was there to tell me that, right? So if anybody else knows this or knows anything like this, always pay it forward. Pay your neighbor with your information. But right, so back to the slides. Right, so just by having associate certification, you apply to all three of these. This is one. Is there a link for us to view these certs? Secret or top secret? Alan, that's really interesting, and I will absolutely jump into that. That's pretty cool talk. So let's just jump from the DoD. And again, I use this one because it's really applicable. It's one I have a lot of experience with. I spent 3 years between DoD and DHS, which again, a lot of the same standards apply. NIST, if anybody's ever heard of NIST, it's like the information like management framework that all of the federal departments use, right? That has an applicability, right? But again, it's really, I use this one specific because I know it, but all vendors, all fields are going to have something like this, and you're going to be able to kind of correlate your experiences, your certifications, the domains that they say they cover, and know your skill set, right? And see how they apply to other things. So if that's going to be DoD with someone like, Alan here, who's interested in top secret clearance, I got sponsored. I did have a secret clearance for what that's worth. I don't know if it was announced that, I'm not, but no biggie. I mean, if you try to get information out of me, you wouldn't really get too much, but sorry about that. I'm reading the message here. Right, but so if you're going to go into a department like in the DoD and you're going to need a secret clearance to do a certain level of work, then you're going to be applying to these certification levels, and then but you don't want to just apply to that, right? You want to get a CISSP or a Security Plus or a CEH that applies to these other certifications. But also, if you need to take that CEH and go out to another sector, you still have that, and it's still applicable across multiple places, right? And you don't get that with the vendor specific ones. And I know I put them in as an honorable mention. That's really why I don't want to put them in there, is you get siloed a lot quicker when you go down vendor specific routes. A link for us to view these certs. Mary, I'm not 100% sure which certs, like, are you talking about this DoD approved baseline here? If that's the case, it is in the slideshow as well, all being published out within the 3 days after we close. This is a clickable link here. I can copy it right out. So yeah, I have this one. I also have a final page with, I think I accumulated all of my links and references in my final slide. And right, so at the footer of all of the previous ones as well, the Japanese domain for CompTIA, the article about requiring a license for the data forensics. So all the stuff I've talked about, to my best of my ability anyway, right? I should have some links in here for you guys to click on when you get these come through. Compliance, governance opportunities. I have a question here. What certs are for compliance or governance opportunities? All of these, really, right? Non-government can put CompTIA Network Plus work. I have two questions. I'm going to start with the first one, and then I have one about Network Plus and government accepting certifications, right? So I'll get to you, Dan, with that. I see you there. But so compliance, and again, I'm going to bounce back over my slides here. Governance, risk, and compliance, right there, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. Security Plus, CASP. I think this is probably the only slide that didn't have it was the ethical hacker, but again, that just kind of fits a niche. Governance is for sure discussed in here. I don't know why I don't see it right this second. Either way, so now I officially can't find the first thing, so I think I'm doing okay with my presentation so far, right? But okay, but right, so again, governance is applied in a lot of the different ones. So right, like look at the domains, know what your test you're taking and how it applies. Thank you, Paul. Know the test you're taking and how it applies, and again, know the field you're trying to go into. If you live in Philly, right, and you know that Philly is a big spot for, I don't know, bank or oil companies, right? I know Pennsylvania had a lot of oil companies early on in American history, right? Pennzoil, right? Pennsylvania's oil. So what if there's a lot of oil companies, and so there's, if you look to the OPEC pages, you might start finding sub certifications that they say, hey, these are our standards and things you need to check. PCI compliance, PCI DSS, payment card industry. If you swipe a credit card somewhere, you have to be PCI compliant. Again, we usually use something like Stripe, with PayPal, Venmo. You don't have to process it or store anybody's information yourself. But all this compliance still really matters, because at a certain size you can't keep outsourcing, or at a certain size you're going to be the authority, right? Like I said, banks can't use external PCI compliance devices because they are the authority, right? They are the institution. So anyway, Damsith, non-governmental jobs can CompTIA network plus work. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I say I'm just leveraging this DoD approved baseline because I know it pretty good. It's really what guided me for 3 or 4 years, and like which ones I wanted to go for, where I kind of wanted. I'm a hobbyist, right? Back to my first slide. I like reading stuff. I like information. I like looking into different stuff. So even things that I'm not going to get, sometimes I study into, right? Like the CHFI, not going to get it, but I really am interested in forensics, and I like to know how to do that. That's really on the side. Like if you're helping friends and family, what you do the most, right? Who is their family's tech support person, right? How many hard drives have you had to try to recover data from for your mom and grandma or aunt, aunts, uncles? That's really where I got probably my start in cyber, was hacking in to play World of Warcraft as a child, because Windows XP is inherently insecure, and recognition of neutral search for cloud computing that weren't just specifically AWS. Michael, yes, Cloud Plus through CompTIA. And actually, for what this is worth, I'm going to jump down real quick. This is our Q&A session. We're in our final stretch here, final 15 minutes or 17 minutes. Everybody take a deep breath. Thank you for sticking with me. I only lost about 20 or 30 folks. That was a great turnout. Thank you for being here. We're going to keep going and refill your drinks. We're just going to start talking now. So yeah, and thank you all. Yes, you were fantastic. Yeah, Cloud Plus. That would be, I took the Cloud Essentials. That's one of the ones I didn't list, Damsith. You're very welcome, Jerry. I'm super happy to do it. And really, if there's anything I can continue to do in my career, that's what I want to do. I've always wanted to be an instructor, share the things that I've learned, and I intend on continuing to learn things and sharing it and perpetually into my existence, right? Thank you, Amanda. That's exactly what I want to hear, right? I mean, like I said, when I came in, I didn't have anybody ask. You just ask your friends at work, right? Maybe you run to your instructor and say, hey, help during your office hours, but sometimes your instructor can be dismissive, right? You're very welcome. Thank you all so much for the support. And again, so right, to rotate back to you, Damsith, scrolling back up to make sure I answer you properly here. Right, so non-cloud certs, non-specific to the stuff that I've talked about. Yeah, Network Plus, very applicable. I would suggest the Network Plus before a Cisco cert if you were still on the fence about which one you would do, or a Palo Alto, right? If you don't know what company you're going to fall into yet, and you want to go ahead and just grab like a good network certification, Network Plus, good spot to be, Damsith. I have one myself, learned a lot. It's probably where I learned most of my subnetting. Isaac, yes, please. I have my LinkedIn. I shared it in the chat earlier. It's in the slides, and I think Corey has it. If that needs to be shared again, I can pay it forward as well. Ian the Goat. Thank you so much, Nicholas. That's the nicest thing somebody said all night. Anybody else have a good meme for me? Thanks for the presentation. You're very welcome. And I know there's a second question I wanted to answer too. Give me just a second. In case, sir, very briefly. Tim, to be totally honest with you, I don't know the in-case certified examiner cert. If you want to elaborate on that a little bit, I can try to shed whatever I do know on it. And again, I knew there was another one that I had to answer. Goodness, where'd this one go? Oh, that's right, the Cloud cert. Yep. So Cloud Plus, that's a good first step. Cloud Essentials, if you're really new to it. Cloud Essentials, then Cloud Plus, CompTIA. Again, I always do that one first, and I push if you're new to certifications, if you're not sure where you're going to go, if you're still kind of trying to get into something. I think first certification step is almost always going to be a good time to start jumping into CompTIA. For example, our cybersecurity program teaches a whole lot of stuff, like even into using Metasploit, launching vulnerable VMs and attacking them, and writing policy and documentation, all that good stuff, right? But really, across the board, we would like to say that like a security plus is really what you leave ready to do. Like you're pretty much a 90%, maybe just study some terms, you could pass a security plus after our cyber course and curriculum. But then I would even say that like CISSP, CEH, you're even a little bit adept for, or like 50 to 60th percentile if you took like a test exam, right? Like if you go all the way through like a good boot camp, specifically Flatiron I can speak for, and you come out the other side, we're not about certification, we're really about that experience. But say when you come out the other side, being able to talk yourself through an interview, right? Say like, you know, I'm going to get this cert now because I know I have the knowledge and the underlying capabilities to even study the terms, right? But yeah. And thank you all so much, Danzith. I'm very glad to satisfied you, my friend. I appreciate you being very active in the chat. Thank you for sharing all that, Corey. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, I'm going to sit back here for a minute and let some more questions flow in if anybody has it. Thank you all for your kind words. Open-ended. Corey, I can pass it back to you. I think that's about all I have for everybody today. Okay, yep, from Kristen. Let me look up here. Sorry if I'm missing you there. Thank you for the reminder. Let's see.
We have a question about pen test.
I am not seeing it.
Is there any restrictions for a pen test or pen test exam?
Oh, I see. What do you recommend for juniors and undergrad that get that breakthrough in cyber? Okay, so that's fair. I guess it really depends. Breakthrough. What are we talking about here? So you get like a job opportunity, for example, or like you're just going through your undergrad and you're kind of starting to decide, hey, I want to be in cyber. And now you're deciding that's the path you want to take. If you can elaborate on that just a little bit, I'd gladly try to answer that a little bit more specifically for you. Great to hear. Thank you so much. Yep. I try to make it as simple as possible. I try to stay light on the slide so we have plenty of room to talk about the stuff, right? Rather than telling you what I want you to know, I want you to tell me what you're more interested in knowing based on the scope of the presentation, right? And I think we all did a great job on that today.
Did you see the question about the pen test?
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Sorry, Corey. Oh my gosh. My speaker's been off.
Oh my gosh. There we go.
I haven't heard anybody in any time. Goodness gracious. Sorry for talking over everybody there if anybody else was speaking. Thank you so much for coming off. I should have paid attention to the mic.
So it's saying, are there any restrictions for a pen test or a pen test exam?
Restrictions, probably not necessarily. Let me put it like this. Most certification vendors, other than CISSP, who makes you do kind of jump through a few hoops because they're that exclusivity thing, it helps their brand if nothing else, right? Thank you. Right, so other than that, I would say that most other certification vendors aren't going to say you have to take this before you take that, or you have to take this before you take that. They're kind of going to let you say, all right, you think you can do it? Come try, spend the money because it pays us, right? So usually not a prerequisite demanded. You do see that a lot in industry, or I say industry, vendor specific certifications. So again, Cisco is always going to have you, and I say Cisco a lot because I do have some experience there. I did work for Cisco for a short time. So Cisco would have you do Cisco routing and switching CCNA first, and then you would choose a specialty, for example. So then you would do like CCNA routing and switching to do the basics of networking, and then you do security if you were security oriented, or if you were going into data center, you would take like a data center one. And I'm sure that's changed since I was in their facility, but that's probably still the paradigm they work with. Same for Red Hat. So that's one that I am familiar with. I don't have their specific cert. I have the Linux Plus, which is the generic one. Again, I always say generic if you don't have a reason to be specific. And only go specific when your company is like, hey, we use this and we will use this forever. Like if you're working for Cisco, you're going to know Cisco certs, right? Or you're going to know you're going to be using Cisco gear, right? So again, that's where something like that would matter. But again, like Red Hat, Red Hat Certified System Administrator would be like the first one you take on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and they wouldn't really even let you start looking at taking the next level, which is the Certified System Engineer, so RCHSE or something like that. I forget all the acronyms. It's a little hard to keep all those in there, right? We're like the military. We like acronyms in IT, right? So unless you get into those kind of silos, I would say that there's not usually prerequisites. It's just what you think you can handle coming in. Because again, some of that's going to be, I just came out of high school and I want to get into tech, so I'm going to try this essentials course. Or some of it is, I've run a business, on the administration side for 10 years, and I'm just tired of doing paperwork. I want to get my hands dirty on something. And then you take like a technical cert, right? So at that point, your organization, you don't need to go through regulation compliance because you've been writing policy for years. You just need to like brush up on a domain, and then you can get a new cert and you apply to a new plethora of jobs, right? And again, so keep your eyes open. I referenced today the DoD one. I've referenced like HIPAA, for example, PCI DSS. They're going to have all these statutes and bullet points that say, oh, you have to do this to protect your data. All that comes back to, all right, I'm certified to do that with these certifications. We implement this framework. This is how we do it. All the documentation that says it, right? All this is cybersecurity. It might sound like a lot of management, and it is, right? But the cybersecurity is, again, a super wide field. What I teach Python, GRC, cryptography, application security, systems, networking, administration, engineering for both of those. Cyber threat intelligence is another one. So I mean, it's a ton of content, right? Keep your eyes open, keep your minds open, stay hungry for information. Keep showing up to events like this, stay active with people on LinkedIn, right? Keep asking me for my LinkedIn, keep asking your friends up here for their LinkedIn. Everybody who's here, I will say right now, you're already doing something significantly right. Yes, David, please go ahead and share your any socials you want to share. All about network building, right? Find your friends, find your community. Person, a gap in resume. How do you start in security? Are there freelance opportunities? I'm weird on that one, Bonnie. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I'm a total I don't know, maybe do we call it a comrade? A lot of people call me that jokingly. I'm all about workers' rights. I don't think I think you should be selling yourself to a department rather than the department saying, well, why do you want this job? Why are you good enough? I think you need to be the one that says, why do you deserve me? Are you going to pay me right? Are you going to give me my time off right? You need to respect yourself, know what you know, don't ever have that imposter syndrome. When you go through and you take these tests and you get these certs and you get qualified, you stand up for yourself, right? Negotiate your salary. Don't if somebody says, what's wrong with this gap in your resume history, right? Tell them, I was doing something else. I was, you could have been a stay-at-home mom, that might be something you and I might think of as men, but for women, a lot of times they just, they get long periods of time off for childcare. Like I took my wife out of work for years. And so she still doesn't work. And then thankfully I'm in a position that I can do that. And that was my whole goal. Right. But yeah, don't get pushed around by a gap in your resume. So that's a little off topic, right? But yeah, don't get pushed around by that. Yeah. So, that depends on who you ask. Some people will say that like education isn't technically experience, or that like you need more to compensate for like the actual industry experience that you want. And this is to Aaron Mahoney here. I see that to everyone who sees that. Thank you again, Abani. And Kristen, again, if I'm saying that wrong, super apologies. Jacob, super glad I could help you there. But right, so for cert training, Aaron, I did stuff like that, right? So if you're building, I used Indeed a lot. I reference the tools that I know and use. So pardon me if you have another tool, just supplement it, right? So like in Indeed, yeah. I mean, if I studied something in a course in a semester and I went through and I took my exam on it and I got a ABC, whatever, I get my course credit for it, that I put down as 0 to 1 year of experience in whatever that is, because you are being taught a subject. But on the other side of that, you know, it takes a lot more of that to speak for something, right? So, I mean, I could spend 12 years in school, but never touch the system live and no one's going to hire me, right? Or they will get me into an interview. And to be honest with you, I'll start talking to them and they'll realize that I've only ever set up a VM and played with a, you know, one-to-one communication or something, right? With whatever given thing that is. And then you'd be like, okay, you're not actually qualified for this job. Right. So, I mean, again, get your hands in there. Really, experience is the best thing for you to get a job and get placed. And we really focus on that here at Flatiron. And that's kind of what the boot camp experience is. We really take the university stuff with the lecture and the PDF and all here, the underlying content, condense it, give it to you. Now jump right into a lab and start doing something with this knowledge, right? And that's really how I think people learn best. And especially in tech, how big and complex some of these ideas can be, some of the frameworks can be, how really intermingled all these systems are, and how much you have to know to just do anything, you know. Tech's like a big place for that, right? You're very welcome, Aaron. Glad I could help you out, sir.
Do we have any last minute questions, y'all? Just want to make sure we're giving everybody enough time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much to everybody who came through. This made me feel really good. Yeah.
So many wonderful questions tonight. Thank you for all of the engagement, you guys. This is great.
And thank you for yours, Charlotte. All right, Corey, here's the torch. If you need to close, you can close. Any final announcements? I'm not sure how we handle this here for the
I got you.
So yeah, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the goat. I'm gonna have to put that in my title on Indeed now. Thank you for the props. I might have to put it under my experience. I have been told I am the goat. Yes, yes, new badge.
Well, a big shout out to you, Ian. Thank you for putting this presentation together. I know that this kind of is a spinoff from what we covered the last time you hosted for us, and we had so many people asking about cyber certification. So it's really great that we got to cover this. If you guys have any other questions about Flatiron School, I dropped the link in there to schedule a chat with admissions. It's also on our website. And as a reminder, you're going to receive a copy of tonight's presentation along with the recording within 3 business days after our event. So thank everyone for coming this evening, and we hope to see you soon. Have a great night. Bye, y'all.